The voice of sharing, Durian
Hi, this is your host Arlene at Monday Morning Matters, where we provide perspectives from this region. Today we are going to talk about Malaysia's migrants. Time for a rights-based policy. Recently, Malaysia was hit hard by the news of the signing of Memorandum of Understanding between Malaysia and Bangladesh to bring in 1.5 million Bangladeshi workers in the country. What followed was negative backlash and xenophobic sentiments from the Malaysian public, as well as questions about the relevance of having more migrant workers in. What's lacking was the question about the human rights of the migrant workers, who are often being looked down as second-class citizens, not to mention they are most often being exploited by a system that treats these workers as perishable commodities. I will be speaking to Adrian Pereira, the Executive Director of North-South Initiative and a staunch human rights activist on migrant workers. In this segment, Adrian shares why fixing the minimum wage alone won't fix Malaysia's dependency on cheap labor and how can we better address xenophobic sentiments towards migrant workers.
Monday Morning Matters.
Perspectives
from Southeast Asia.
With me is Adrian Pereira. Earlier on, he has shared a lot of views regarding on the migrant workers' plights. Let's talk about the MOU. The MOU with Bangladesh has been signed, but what are the MOUs that we have out there with different countries?
We have a MOU between the Philippines and Malaysia, especially since many domestic workers come from Philippines. Indonesia and Malaysia are currently negotiating better salaries for their and protection for the workers. So that's ongoing. Cambodia also signed MOU with Malaysia recently. But one of the struggle which, as a civil society actor, is we don't have access to the processes of coming up with the MOUs. So we are not able to give very concrete suggestions. But I think with better than not having an MOU, these MOUs kind of provide some kind of protection. Mm-hmm. So I don't think the Nepalese have a MOU in Malaysia, so that's some of the struggles and challenge we face.
Mm-hmm. MOU usually is between government to government. At the civil society level, do you engage directly with the Malaysian government, or do the Malaysian government come to you guys to get advice or at least recommendations?
They do come to civil society and they ask for recommendations on different issues, not necessarily the MOU. For example, recently there was a consultation on an advisory for employers towards domestic workers. So even though it's not a MOU, and it's not even a law, but it's giving us a platform to engage directly with employers and even our Ministry of Human Resource. But it's actually a bit more complex because when recruitment of migrant workers take place, one of the key actors is the Home Affairs Ministry, because in terms of immigration, giving the permit comes from the Home Affairs, and if there is a mismatch between the demand of employers towards migrant workers with the recruitment process, then historically we have seen this become very bad for migrant worker rights.
I see. And with that, what would be the impact to the country?
I mean, when migrant workers are brought in without securing jobs, then there's a tendency of being exploited by those who, or employers who are looking for cheaper labor, longer working hours. So that becomes very harsh for migrant workers.
I see. If Malaysia decided to comply with international standards as well as to sign MOUs with countries that would send their unskilled workers to Malaysia, do you think it would be better for Malaysia's economy?
It really depends, because we have high unemployment numbers among young people, and if we are bringing in migrant workers without providing employment for our citizens, then that becomes a big social and also an economic question, political also, of course. So the economy, the whole economic system is a very capitalist-based system, which really preys on the weak and vulnerable groups. So that itself is problematic. And without addressing that as a core, then even if we follow rights, human rights standards, the cycle of violation is going to continue. So it's a whole gravy trail of profiteering from various parties involved, from recruitment back in their own country, to the journey coming here, to the immigration processing, to job placement in the workplace, in their hostels, and even on the way back to their own country.
I see.
Every stage has its whole list of exploitation. So there's definitely a system failure here.
I see. What are the countries that maybe Malaysia can learn from in terms of protect workers' rights?
I mean, we have to look to countries which have strong or good history of labor unions, where the labor unions welcome migrant workers to join them, and even some countries where migrant workers have been able to form their own unions. So I think, I'm not saying it's perfect, but we had some good examples from Korea in the past, where migrant workers were able to socialize their concerns and rights at the ground. So I think we can look at a developing country like Korea on how these rights can be applied for all and not just local workers.
Due to the rise in negative responses by Malaysians and some of the Malaysian leaders as well, that has forced the Home Minister Ahmad Zahid Hamidi to put off, at least temporarily, on the bilateral deal of recruiting the 1.5 million Bangladeshi workers to Malaysia, and what exactly he means.
So if you look back a bit, the process of recruitment and also placement has caused many questions to arise, and even that also we have no clarity of what's going on. So I guess as a natural response to the different protests, I think the MTUC did a very strong protest yesterday, and of course they represent a majority of workers, organized workers in the country. So I think we should welcome this temporary halting, but we need to sit down with the minister and find out a bit more what's really going on.
The civil society as well as experts say that the solution perhaps is just to increase the minimum wage. Then you have more Malaysians work in those areas that they consider as 3D jobs. Do you think a minimum wage is the way out, or do you think there's more to that?
There's definitely more to that. I think the danger of coming up with one-off solution really doesn't work because of the complexity of the global economic system. So let's say we increase the minimum wage in Malaysia. What happens if the companies say, okay, we are going to shift to another country where we can exploit workers which have a lower minimum wage. So what should happen is we look at holistic solutions. This is definitely a global issue, and perhaps a global floor wage or a Asian floor wage could actually prevent exploitation by any company, whether it's local or in the region. So let's say a company wants to escape from its duties by setting up a company outside in another country, developing country. They can't really do that because the wages in the other countries are already quite substantial and according to proper rights. So I think we need much more thinking. Maybe we're just lacking the leadership of finding a good solution.
Mm-hmm. And my last question today. So how can we address xenophobic sentiments among Malaysians?
I think even the big question of race relations in Malaysia still unanswered for many years, and I think we even lack the leadership for that. I mean, as long as our political parties are race-based, that's going to continue for a long time. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But do you think that the reason why some of the Malaysians are xenophobic is because they don't dare to look at the bigger picture, the kind of systemic exploitation that is happening on the larger scale? They would rather see the smaller issue that is directly impacting their lives.
Even among my personal friends and the officials I interact, we are a country that's still very inward-looking. I think many don't share worldview perspectives of the bigger system. But I don't blame Malaysians for that. I think the economic, being from a higher GDP income country compared to our neighbors, naturally people will start looking and thinking like that. So I would challenge all Malaysians to interact more with our migrant workers. If you can, and if you think or wonder why they are coming here in the first place, buy a cheap Air Asia ticket or whatever, fly to their country of origin and have a look at their living conditions, study their economic system. Why do they actually have to come here when there is so much potential back at home? Has the agrarian reform failed in their own countries? Why do they actually need to come here when there's so much opportunity to create back in their own homes? So it's not just a Malaysian issue. This is a global issue, and we need to look at it that way.
With that, thank you very much, Adrian Pereira.
Thank you, Arlene. Always happy to be on the radio.
Monday Morning Matters.
Perspectives
From Southeast Asia.
Thanks for listening to Durian ASEAN with me, Arlene. For more interviews, please tune in to our website at durianasian.com. If you're on the go, you can always download our TuneIn app on your mobile. Please subscribe to our YouTube channels at Durian ASEAN and Durian ASEAN TV. Don't forget to follow us on our Facebook page, Twitter and Instagram. We always welcome feedbacks from our listeners. Stay tuned with Monday Morning Matters on every Monday, same time, 10 to 11 a.m. on GMT's Plus 8. Durian ASEAN, the voice of discovery and sharing.
You're now listening to Durian ASEAN, the voice of discovery and sharing.